welcome back to the Found Frequency Podcast, your space for that alignment, expansion, and of course, unstoppable energy. I am your host and mindset mentor, Fallon, and today we are diving into one of my absolute favorite universal laws. If you're new here, buckle up, because I could honestly talk universal laws all day, every day. And listen, if there is one thing you study in this lifetime, make it this, okay? Why? Because once you truly understand the laws, everything shifts. You stop fighting the current, you stop burning yourself out, you stop thinking life is against you, and you start seeing that life is always working with you. I mean everything. Everything moves according to these laws. And I couldn't think of a more perfect time to talk about the law of rhythm. Why? Because, the seasons are literally shifting around us. I think it was, I don't know what day it is. It was like 2 days ago that fall started on Monday. So by the time of this recording, just 2 days ago. And, I have to say, being here in the Pacific Northwest and actually seeing the seasons again after literally living in the tropics for most of my life and traveling has been a real gift. I am saying this, of course, before winter hits us, but we'll see if I eat my words in January. But something tells me that I'm going to embrace that too. So I want you to settle in, grab your water, grab your coffee, and let's go ahead and talk about how to work with the rhythm of life instead of fighting it. Because that's, my love, is where the magic happens. So let me just go ahead straight up and break it down for you. What is the law of rhythm? Okay. The law of rhythm is very simple in its truth. It's basically just telling you that everything moves in cycles, okay? We have expansion and then we have contraction. We've got the rise and then we have the fall. We've got the planting and then the harvest and then the rest and then the new planting. You name it, nature does it. The cosmos do it. Your body does it. Your business does it. Your heart does it. And I feel like so many women get stuck trying to live in one season forever. Like always fucking on, always producing, always performing. But life doesn't work like that. The universe never intended for you to be in summer energy 24/7. And that's why understanding this rhythm is a game changer. When you stop fighting the natural swing of life, everything gets easier, everything's more aligned, and honestly, everything just becomes more pleasurable. So when you're talking about the cycle, it's like if we think of expansion, okay, expansion is the creative period. It's visible. It's like this yes energy. If you're in business, it's a launching thing. It's the dates. It's the networking. It's this energetic momentum. It's the big stuff, the social life, the big growth spurts. Okay. And then on the other side of that, we have the contraction. Okay. That's the inward. That's the refining. That's the integrating the energy. This is very much the season of rest and recalibration and processing and editing and consolidating and waiting. Now, both of these are necessary. One actually feeds the other. It's like one plants the seed and the other grows the root. If you think of rhythm like breathing, okay, you inhale. When you inhale, what happens? You expand. When you exhale, you contract. You can't hold the inhale forever without passing out. The inhale is like this readiness phase that's creating space for the exhale, which to me is like the integration phase. And that exhale, what does that do? That then prepares you for the next inhale. So this is seen in nature all of the time. I want you to think of like easiest example, the ocean. Waves rise, waves fall. You don't freak out that the tide's not coming back, or you don't tell the tide to come back faster. You just sit by the water and you respect that it's got its own movement going. It has its own rhythm. Or trees, especially what I'm seeing now, being in the fall, leaves bloom and they fall. In the winter, if you've ever been somewhere that has a real winter, I'm not talking about the tropics here, but like a proper winter, trees look dead. There's no leaves on them. It looks like this, it's kind of this peaceful skeleton, I guess, the outer of the tree. But what's going on is it's doing hidden necessary work underground, okay? Another super easy example, bears. Bears hibernate. They go deep so they can return to power in the spring. You know, nature honors that rhythm. So we need to honor that rhythm. You know, to really make this click for you, an easy analogy. I'm thinking of like going back to the ocean, okay? Say you build during low tide. You're going to build a sandcastle, okay? And during the low tide, you build it, you plant it, you expand it. And then at some point, the ocean comes up and it reclaims and it restores that at high vibe. And that's like rest and contract. I don't know if that's the best analogy. Seasons in your wardrobe, for example, if we're going to bring it to us, you know, you don't wear summer clothes in the snow. You adapt your wardrobe and your practices to the season, okay? You know, I mean, for women, we literally have a month-to-month body cycle, and each part of that cycle is meant to have a different phase. You know, I'm not going to go whole into, you know, why it's so important to cycle sync, but recognizing that, you know, when you're menstruating, that's a rest period. Or, you know, different periods, you're in different things are happening in your body, and different things you need to adapt to what's going on there, okay? Or if you think of like business, you know, the creative cycle of running a business. If you're not running a business, just go with me here. The example would still be valuable, okay? Planting is like the idea, okay? This idea pops up, you start doing the research. And then once you've planted the seed, there's the growing. So this would be maybe, you know, launching something or that energetic momentum. And then the next stage here is the harvest, right? This is where you're going to deliver things, and this is where things start to monetize. And then you go to the audit and the plan after that, where you're slowing down, you're analyzing what went right, what didn't, you know, how do we adjust it? You plan launches during growth windows and schedule audits in contraction windows, okay? So everything has its place. You know, looking at seasonal life rhythms annually. Obviously, there's spring. Spring is the representation of new beginnings. You know, for me, it's like up-leveling. And then summer. Summer is super expansive energy. Think about how much daylight you have in the summer. What are you doing in the summertime? You are out there. You are socializing. You are staying up later because the sun doesn't go down. You know, it's a time for travel. And then you go to the next season. You go to fall. And that's a time for harvest, but that's also reflection. It's like we start to kind of slow our wheels down. You know, we're not going off to parties and barbecues all the time, okay? We're starting to like make our cup of tea and go to bed earlier. And then we've got our winter, which is like the rest. This is recalibrate. This is the inner work. I actually do love winter. I don't know how it'll go, like I said, in the Washington rain, but or snow, but I feel like I'm going to enjoy it. But it's a really, really great time to go inwards, okay? So I want you to match your, you know, what you've got going on in your life and really just like reflect what's been happening in the different seasons, you know, and where you are. Now, I am saying these seasons like literally how they go annually, but you can have many seasons throughout the year. Okay. You know, if you think of even if you're a parent and life stage rhythms, you know, there's seasons when kids are tiny and they require constant giving and contraction and less of the external stuff. Okay. And then there's the teen years where that might be more of a return to the expansion. You know, you go through different seasons, you're honoring different boundaries and goals and things within being a parent. Okay. So unpacking that, now that we kind of understand, or I hope you understand now what the law of rhythm is, okay? Nature has it. We all need to follow it. We all run by it. And looking, you know, bringing it back to you. Like it's very, very easy to see it happening in nature. But what I want to do in this episode is really show you how to bring it and incorporate it into your life. You know, I want you to start kind of asking questions to yourself. Like what season of your life are you in right now? And on top of that, are you actually honoring that season or are you fighting it? You know, the 4 seasons, as I mentioned, we've got this growth and expansion season, or you could easily relate that to summer. And this is a go time. This is like fucking let's go. This is when you're just bringing it. You're feeling magnetic. Ideas are flowing. Energy is high. Opportunities are landing. It's a very, very expansive energy. And you're saying yes, and you want to be seen, and you're in full expression. Okay? And then again, the harvest and the reflection. This is where we're going to start to really see the fruits of our labor. But we're also invited at the same time to reflect, to course correct, and release what isn't working. It's really less about speed and more about the wisdom and more about starting to slow down. And then again, going back to winter, resting and integration. I think this one is the most challenging for people, because our world resists it. Winter can be really where the gold is. Slowing down, pulling back, integrating is a really deep reset so that your energy can expand again. This is the point I'm getting to. Your energy is not slowing down forever. It is a season. And then that brings you obviously from winter into spring, new beginnings, new seeds, fresh energy, new relationships, new mindset reset. This is really kind of when the curiosity sparks and you feel possibly like you're crackling, it's just the energy shifts in so many different phases. If I think about my own personal story, obviously I've been going through seasons throughout my entire life, but like moving abroad, regardless of the time of year it was a pure expansion season for me. Everything was new. Everything was exciting. It was a really adventurous time in my life, and I could say the same when I started my business. There was some wild growth, really big learning lessons, some building and some creating. But eventually you come up and you hit a bit of resistance. Things will slow down. And it's a matter of like in that contraction, like integrating what I've learned and realigning with my vision and actually like trusting the rest. If I look back, those slower seasons were never wasted time. They were really this more of a foundational time period that made the next wave of expansion possible. Without having this in between or this slow period and this fast period, I would have burned out, like anybody. It's like these people that just go all the fucking time. And you wonder why they burn out. I mean, that's exactly it. Again, if you think of a tree, it doesn't bloom all year. It's spring. In spring, it buds. In summer, it's going to flourish. In fall, it's going to shed. In winter, it rests. And when it comes to ourselves, we really do in our society demand summer energy 365 days a year. And it just, it's so obvious to me why so many women and men feel exhausted and behind. But when you actually learn to honor your own season, everything does feel easier. And why does it feel easier? Because it's aligned. But why? Because it's natural, So I want you to, again, reflect here. I want you to think where do I feel like I'm planting? Where am I expanding? Where am I harvesting? Or where am I resting? Where are you right now? And actually honor that. Or recognize if you're forcing yourself into a different season. And what would it shift if you actually gave yourself full permission to be in that season instead of pushing to be somewhere else and try to push your way into the next season before it's even started? When you do know your season, you stop judging yourself for not being somewhere else. You start moving with the rhythm of it instead of against it. And that's where things are going to flow. And it's going to be less of a fight and more of a flow. You're not swimming up against the river. You're going with the actual natural flow, and a few times on how let me give you a few segments on some tips on how to work with this law and not against it. Okay. Knowing where you are in your season is like half the battle. Okay, the real shift will happen when you do stop judging and you start actually aligning with that season. So tip number 1 here is going to be stop labeling the season as good or bad. One of the biggest traps I see women fall into is labeling their season like expansion, epic, great. This is such a fun feeling, right? But rest, what do they label rest as a bad thing? The truth is both are equally necessary. Without the quiet of winter, spring can't bloom. Without contraction, expansion is not possible. Every season serves your evolution. Tip number 2, I want you to use your contraction wisely. Instead of panicking when things slow down, use that season to recharge, to reflect, to integrate. That pause is not a punishment. I like to look at it, I've rephrased this in a different episode before, but the pause being preparation. Whenever you're in a pause stage, know that you're like 3 steps from gold. It is prepping you. So there's things either you need to learn or you need to integrate or you need to reflect on, but that pause is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not like I'm stuck. It's like, hey, let's rest now because what's coming next is so much bigger than you imagined. And then, of course, tip number 3, ride that wave of growth. When the season does shift and you feel that surge of momentum, I want you to go with it. I want you to say yes. I want you to follow the nudges. Create, launch, expand, do whatever, I guess what I'm getting at here is don't overthink it because you're going to kill the momentum. Don't hesitate when these nudges come, when it's time to expand again, when it's time to jump into this next season, because that is going to completely shut off your energy, which is going to shut off your momentum. And we definitely don't want to do that. Growth seasons are meant to be ridden like that wave. The more you lean in, the further it's going to carry you, One of the clearest times I've felt the law of rhythm in action was after my very first entrepreneurial venture, which I've spoken briefly about before on the podcast. And I was in Mexico. I was really in this stage of just fucking ready to make some changes. I knew that some season was coming to an end. I wasn't really sure where it was going. And I was kind of changing the entire course of my work. I was changing my entire life, really, and how it was showing up. But of course, during this entire period of change, life kept moving around me too. And at that time, that slower season, it kind of, because I hadn't integrated everything fully, it felt like frustrating. I felt stuck. I felt like I was stalling. But when I look back now, that contraction, that pause was everything. It was the season where I rebuilt my foundation. I found my authentic voice and I really clarified the work that I truly wanted to bring into the world. Without leaning into that stillness and honoring the rhythm instead of fighting it, I never would have had that courage or even the clarity or the alignment to step into my next level. And that pause, that season of rest and integration is really what became the launching pad for everything that I'm doing right now. I mean, that was before this podcast was even born. And at the time, if you would have told me I was doing a podcast, I would have told you were crazy. So when you zoom out, you'll always see the rhythm balancing itself. That is the point of that story. You are never stuck in one season forever. The cycle always continues. Expansion always follows contraction. Spring follows winter. The tide always returns. Your job is to stop fighting the rhythm and start flowing with it. Now, if you know me by now, or if you've listened to more than one of these episodes, then you would know that I'm going to infuse this with some energetics because I do everything universal law and energetics because that's what it's all about. Rhythm isn't just the outer cycles you see in nature. It's also about your energy. Energy moves in cycles too, okay? We are not designed to live in endless summer. High vibe, go, 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 energy 24/7. That is a one-way ticket to burning out your nervous system, flattening your frequency, and wondering why, no matter how hard you keep pushing, you feel disconnected from yourself. Now, trust me, I have been there. And I know many of you have too, because society glorifies hustle like it is a medal. But the truth is, honoring your inner rhythm is what keeps you alive and aligned and thriving. But you've really got to start asking yourself better questions and getting to know your energy more and leaning into what works for you and how to flow versus also, I've seen this trap a lot actually in the entrepreneur world, in up-leveling world, in the mindset world, where they're like, oh no, that's, I'm not aligned with that, so I don't do that, or I don't push past my edge. And we've got to be careful there as well, because that's not what I'm trying to get at this episode. You need to respect your energy, but you also need to know when your mind is playing tricks on you. There's a huge difference, okay? But what I'm getting at here is that was a totally different tangent, but when you honor your rhythm, And you learn that you actually stabilize your energetic field because you're anchoring into consistency, right? You're getting a lot more balanced, and then you're going to build expansion that actually lasts. Think of rhythm as life's like built-in integration system. You wouldn't keep inhaling without exhaling. You wouldn't sprint a marathon without pausing to breathe. So why is it that we try to sprint our way through life without honoring our rest cycle? Rhythm is what keeps us alive and attuned. So this is actually like a really huge part of my own mentoring style. I'm never going to tell you to hustle harder or force your way up the mountain. Okay? Because what happens when you do that? When you finally get to the fucking top of that mountain, and when I'm saying mountain, I'm meaning like your goal, your next level, shifting identities. But when you're running up the mountain and you don't stop to breathe, you can't breathe when you're at the top. You're like exhausted and you fucking fall right back down. Instead, I really have this style of like teaching you how to respect your rhythm, to honor your energy, and really to get so fucking in tune with yourself that when the season shifts, nothing phases you. Why? Because you understand, you have the awareness, you are conscious of what's happening. So what happens is you stop actually fighting the natural flow and you start moving with it. And that, my loves, is when your energy just becomes bigger and more magnetic because you are running with the natural cycles of the universe. And I want you to ask yourself, like, where in my life can I actually honor the exhale instead of forcing another inhale? So, my loves, in honor of this beautiful fall season, can we just take a moment here and appreciate being present, one, but where we are right now? What season are we in? The rhythm of life are we moving through right now? If you are not off track, or if you feel like you're off track, I want you to re-look at that. You're probably just in a different flow, and get back in rhythm, recognizing even from last week, resistance not being a punishment or contraction not being a failure. It's all working together. It's all part of the flow. When you honor your season and you trust the cycles, you start to see that life has always been conspiring in your favor, always. And, it's like you hear it all the time in the personal development industry. And this is why, because they understand that you're working with the laws of the universe and it's always in your favor. It's really, I could go down a whole nother tangent on the lens that you're looking through life with. But I want you to honor the season, trust your cycle, and start to see that life has always been conspiring in your favor. And as always, my loves, it has been such a pleasure connecting with you, sharing this energy, and welcoming a new season together. And I do have an exciting announcement before we jump off. If you haven't seen on my socials, or I don't know if I've popped it up there just yet, but I have officially just reopened enrollment for my signature one-on-one mentorship container. Spots are pretty limited. I do have a few women in the wings already asking questions. So if you're feeling the pull and you really are just like ready for that next fucking level, ready to have the support and that mentorship my 3 pillars are we rewire, we recalibrate, and we reconnect, and if that's something that you want to dive deeper into, and if you want to learn more about the laws and how to actually work with them instead of against them, then shoot me a DM, jump in there. You can shoot me the word magnetic and I will happily have a nice chat with you. Now, if this episode sparks something inside you, awesome, great. I am so glad we found each other. Please share it with your people, share it with your friends, share it with any of the women in your world who need this reminder today. Tag me, DM me, let me know what season you're in. And if you are vibing with these conversations, please subscribe, rate, review it. It really, it takes 2 seconds and helps this podcast get into the hands of the right people. So thank you so much for tuning in, my loves. I will catch you next week. Bye.